Hey, we're going live. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining the call. It's me, Crappy Childhood Fairy. Rob has been gathering questions for me to answer for you. So here's one. Light777 says, I had a great childhood with some hard experiences also. I've done lots of therapy, but have big anxiety issues. Why can't I stop the anxiety thoughts that are so bad when I wake up? Oh, well, I don't know. That's a pretty big question. Here at Crappy Childhood Fairy, we don't worry too much about the diagnosis, but we deal with the symptom. And if you're anxious, we call that here fear. And our daily practice techniques are what we do about fearful and resentful thoughts. And I totally encourage you to learn the daily practice. And if you haven't yet, you can take my free course too for the daily practice. And if you do, if once you're on our email list, you'll be invited to daily practice calls that we offer every week free to anybody who's learned the techniques and wants to come. Mariska says, can you re-regulate also with attachment issues and limerence? Yes, you can. She says, I have anxious attachment and I have a long distance relationship. I don't want to move in and live together. Is this relationship possible? You don't want to move in and live together? Well, I don't know. What kind of relationship is it? Just a long distance relationship? Is that what they want? If you learn to re-regulate, you have choices about where your whole world can get as big as you want it to be. You can be in a relationship, you can be single, you can stay regulated doing either one. You can try for new jobs, you can try a new hobby, you can try a new sport, you can get up and do public speaking, you can start a YouTube channel, which I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't have the daily practice. Rachel Nichols says, I met my husband 35 years ago. He has a big, beautiful family, and I pretended to go along with religion I don't believe in. I can't be fake about it. I'm just avoiding them. Don't know what to do. All right. So what's going on, Rachel, there is you're fawning, you're people pleasing. And I get that you did it to be polite. You did it to be included. You did it to make peace. But in the end, what you're doing, just to be tough love fairy, you're manipulating people to like you by telling them something fake about yourself. And I agree, you can't really go too far with faking about something as big as that. But you also don't have to make a big speech about it. And I just encourage you to find your way back to being authentic and real about who you are, but without having to confront them or, yeah, you don't have to make a big thing about it. Just begin being yourself now. And from time to time, it's probably going to require that you speak up and say things like, yeah, I'm going to skip that thing. That's not really my religion. And if they have something to say about it, okay, be ready. And I hope your spouse backs you up and accepts you as you are and can stand by you if people have a problem that you are you. But yeah, it's really good. I think it becomes necessary in our healing to be ourselves, and the fruit of our healing is to become ourselves. So it's all a good thing. Yosra says, hi, Anna, I need to know why I have rigid standards around perfectionism about who I want to have a relationship with. And I'm also avoiding the whole idea and push potential partners away. Well, I don't think I have enough information about you to say why you do that. But yeah, I think I can't really help you on that one. I don't know. Only you know why you do that. But if you think it has something to do with trauma, well, then it's called avoidance. And you can work on that. Avoidance is a trauma response, along with clinging, trying to control other people, getting all codependent, where we're just not comfortable with the relationship in its natural state. And we want to try to manipulate it, either make it go away, make it never go away, make somebody be what we, try to turn somebody into the person we wish they were. And all of that these are trauma responses that actually prevent any kind of closeness or intimacy or real communication. So we end up lonely. The relationships don't tend to last. And in order to deal with our discomfort of being around people and being close to them, we need a place to take the emotions that come up, and they come up with people. We need a way to cope with our feelings about stuff. It's anxiety provoking being around people at all, let alone like a romantic partner. So what I do is I take it to my daily practice. This is where we take fearful and resentful thoughts and ask for them to be removed and start to create a little space in our lives, in our minds, in our emotions to be in present time and experience something new and something that's really happening now. A lot of times trauma reactions, they're reactions to something that happened a long time ago. So they're not really relevant to the relationship at hand. Although God knows, we end up in relationships that are very similar to the ones that hurt us in the first place. So sometimes avoidance is a way to try to hold on to the relationship, but not get too close when we don't actually feel good about it. But sometimes avoidance is a tragic thing where we push away people that really do love us and are pretty great. So we don't have discernment about that so long as our minds are full of fearful and resentful thoughts. It's pretty hard to get it straight to know what it is that you should be doing. La Lulu Z says suggestions on what to say and how to face a loved one who doesn't comprehend CPTSD or dysregulation when, despite your best efforts, you didn't meet deadlines or expectations and failed again. So you didn't meet deadlines or expectations and failed again. People who are affected by that, their first consideration isn't that you have CPTSD. So the first thing you can do is say, I'm really sorry. The second thing you can do is start working on your re-regulation. And most people don't really believe in CPTSD unless they have it and recognize it in themselves. Nobody understood my dysregulation. They knew when you get emotionally dysregulated, people recognize that you're doing something strange and they know it's dysfunctional and they know it hurts them. And when you change that, they start to believe whatever you're going to explain to them about what you know about yourself. But I just wouldn't make your healing too contingent on saying that you have CPTSD. That's not really something that is relevant to them. If you've told them once and they don't care, it's just, you got to just work on the behavior. And that's what we do here. And I know I have CPTSD and sometimes I have to explain to people, but most of the time they don't care. They don't care. They just care that I'm late or whatever it is. They care that I'm emotionally dysregulated. All right. Adrienne says, how does your practice keep us out of the pattern of rumination and rehearsal that dysregulates us if we're still focusing on what we want to stop focusing on? Well, rumination is the fruit of dysregulation, and I don't. It's like, is it the cause? Is it come from? I don't know, but rumination is a waste of your mental energy. It's when you're thinking the same resentful, anxious thoughts over and over and over again. And it's like when you get a bad night of sleep and you're ruminating on something. It's like, what will I tell the bank? They never sent me that statement. If I had had the statement on time, I'm going to tell the bank. What time will I call the bank? And you can't sleep. That's rumination. It's a terrible waste of time. And just like that, if you had a pad of paper next to your bed and you were worrying about the bank and some problem you had there, and you could just reach over and jot down a note to yourself for the morning to say, remember to call the bank about that question, you could then relax and go to sleep, in theory. And that's what our daily practice is. It's a way to get the anxious thoughts that we would otherwise be ruminating about onto paper. We get them all there, all the anxious, all the angry thoughts and feelings. We just whatever's on top of mind, we get it on paper. Now, it's a very specific technique. Sometimes people, they hear me talk about the daily practice and then they go rush in and start making a list of stuff that pisses them off. That will make you feel worse. Odds are better than not that it'll make you feel worse. So I really encourage you, either get the book on how to do it, or take the free course online and start to get some experience, train yourself to move those fearful and resentful thoughts out of your mind and give it a break. A lot of people are afraid, like, if I get those thoughts on paper and ask for them to be removed, I won't have important thoughts, because your anxious thoughts and your angry thoughts are often, they do have a function. Your anxiety is there to remind you to make that doctor's appointment, to get that lump checked. Your anger is there to stand up for yourself, that somebody has done an injustice to you and you need to stand up for yourself. Ruminating is when it just goes on and on and on and on, and nothing good is coming from it. And it starts to consume your consciousness. And next thing you know, everybody who knows you knows that you're sort of the irritable one over in the corner there. And it's not good for your life. So we learn this technique to get it on paper and make space in our minds. I want to start with the daily practice, but I have fear that it will trigger me and I will be worse than now. What do you recommend? That's funny. I recommend you write that on the paper. I have fear. I want to start the daily practice, but I have fear that it will trigger me and I will be worse than now. That's what you do. And then you write the sign off. That is how you do it. It's not really important that you fear that. And if you do it right, it's not going to trigger you. It's basically just taking stuff you're already triggered about and helping you discharge it. It's not a trigger in itself. You're not digging for things that aren't already like totally weighing on your mind. So that's what it is. We're not ever making a big list. We're not looking for great tragedies in life. We're just like, whatever it is that's bothering you at the moment, which is going to be a mix of things in the past, things you're worried about in the future, just vague senses of things. It'll be big things and trivial things, but whatever's bothering your mind right now, you get it on paper. And you've just given the classic example of having fear that it will trigger you. So there you go. And if you were to write that, fear it's going to trigger me. Oh, and by the way, what's the problem with that? Well, fear if I get triggered, fear I end up smoking cigarettes, or fear I end up yelling at somebody. That's, you can hang out there and allow the fear to come to your mind so you can put it on paper. But you don't have to go looking for anything. And there's no secret to being diligent with the daily practice. Give it a try. If it makes you feel better, you'll probably want to do it again. And there's no sense in, hammering yourself into doing it. It's definitely worth giving a try, but do it as taught. The biggest problem I see is people who they didn't really take the course, they didn't really like read the book or see how to do it exactly. It's a very specific format that gives relief rather than making things feel worse. So usually if people are feeling worse when they're doing the daily practice, they skipped something that's very important for how you do it. Gleno says, I have CPTSD, cope with it quite well, but struggle with change. For example, Sunday to Monday, and then going back to work. Any suggestions, please? I think that's a thing, right? That is a known thing that some people have, and they don't cope with change well. And, um, I'm not sure if I can give you anything better than what I do about everything is I get the fears and resentments on paper about it, and it just creates a little bit of softness in the heart, a little bit more willingness and openness, or a little more clarity. Like, I do not want to do this, and I'm not going to do it, because that's an option too. What causes us, this is Welcome to the Other Half, says, what causes us to date someone for only a couple of months, but not get over the breakup for a couple of years? Yeah, that's an attachment wound. That's just an attachment wound. And sometimes it comes from childhood, or sometimes the person was really great and you love them and you messed up and you haven't let it go yet. But let's say that this person really doesn't want you in their life anymore. And so it's obsessive rumination to keep holding on to the relationship. And we talk about limerence here. Sometimes it's that. But basically, if a relationship is over and there's no chance it can be resurrected because the other person, but you can't stop thinking about it, it's just rumination again. It's your attachment wound kind of generating thoughts and feelings and avoiding reality. Obsessing on something you can't have is an escape. It's escaping reality. And it can become like an old pair of shoes that has thumbtacks in it. It doesn't feel very good, but it's the shoes that we know, and we put them on and we feel that. And it's that getting romantically obsessed with somebody is very common with people who were neglected as kids. There's just an unmet need to be loved there, and you get too good at projecting it on somebody who doesn't love you because you weren't getting loved properly as a kid. You're just good at it. You're good at just sort of romanticizing pain, or what I call eroticizing abandonment. It's just like, oh, they don't want me, but somehow it's just like so compelling romantically. And it's a maladaptation. If you want to stop, you cut contact with the person and you stop talking about them and you stop thinking about them. And that's really countercultural to say that you should do that, but you should. If you want to get over an obsession, that is what you do. You stop talking about them and thinking about it. There's nothing more that needs to be said. And at times when I've done individual coaching, there's always people who call me up and they say, oh, I've got an obsession. I go, okay, what's going on? And they would happily use the whole hour telling me about the person and a little blow by blow of what happened. But what they're doing and what I won't allow them to use me for is they're visiting, like being able to tell the story is a way to indulge in the obsession. And so the healing really comes from bringing the focus to yourself and trying to make your life happy, joyful, connected with friends. When your life is going better like that, the obsession will die down. There's very little you can do about it, except for cut contact, stop talking about the person, and stop thinking about the person. And in my life, when I've either been obsessed romantically or obsessed negatively, like I'm so depressed, you can stop having that thought and you give yourself a go-to thought that's just sort of pleasant. It could be like, lemony ice water is something I like. Even thinking about that is a positive thought for me. Or kittens, or green grass under my feet. You can just have a positive thought you think about and start practicing shifting your thoughts to something that you like to think about, away from the thing that constitutes a negative rumination. We can do that. It's not easy, and sometimes we're sloppy at it, but the effort is a very good step to take, to go into to endeavor, say, I don't want to talk about this anymore. I want to stop activating and giving energy to this fantasy I have, that I would be so happy if this person would come around. That's a fantasy. It's not real. It's an escape from reality. And if you need to escape reality, it means your reality needs a little bit of your love and attention right now, so that it's a more pleasant reality. Oh, somebody had just said, Alyssa just said, how does one stop obsessive thinking? I've gone no contact, but struggle with my thoughts and talking to them in my head, replaying old conversations. Yeah. Twice a day, do your daily practice, Alyssa. You can, when you're doing your daily practice, you can write about that person all you want, and how you feel and what you fear and what you're resentful, and fear I'm never going to meet anybody, and fear they were the one. Then you ask for it to be removed, and then the rest of the time when you're not writing, I'm telling you, make this your goal. Take your mind off of it. It's going over and over it with your mind that's making it stronger and stronger and stronger. And so, no, we can't totally control our thoughts, but even trying is how we do this. And it's worth it. Just like somebody, if their problem was heroin addiction, I think about it all the time, how good it would be, where I get it, how much it costs, what it smells like, what it feels like. Yeah, don't do that. You don't do that. It's better to surround yourself with people who share your goal to stop being, sucked into these negative things, including romantic obsession. And you'll see this with people who have love addiction. They find love addicted friends and they hang out together and go, I know, we've got to just pick a name. Michael, one time he bought a hamburger, and then we got in the car, and then we were driving, and then he changed lanes. And, it's like, there's like people who will support each other to talk endlessly about the person they're obsessed with. It's not a healthy friendship. Good friends will just help you change the subject. You got stuck in a loop, and your attachment wound is what drives it. And healing work on your trauma, on your dysregulation, learning to re-regulate and setting up a life that's fun for you, is how you can start to, push out the need for that rumination. We're all just sort of grasping for love, and we have weird ways of doing it when we grew up with trauma. Phoenix says, I think I'm limerent on my best friend of 4 years, and I think there's a chance he might have feelings for me too, but I don't know how to get out of limerence without putting distance. Well, I guess if you think there's a chance, that means you have hope. And most people who are limerent will not disclose how they feel, because they know on some level that disclosing how they feel is going to ruin the friendship. So if you think that there might be mutual interest, maybe it's in your best interest to know. And the only reason I would say don't do it is if this person you're into is in a relationship, and you even talking about that stuff or tempting them would hurt their current relationship. Don't be a jerk. Don't try to ruin their relationship. But if you're both just single people being friends and you think it's mutual, I don't know, you might want to put your cards on the table and see where it is. You probably haven't done that because you probably sense that they're not interested. And you're right, it could damage the friendship. But honestly, losing a limerent friendship is better than staying stuck in limerence year after year, because so long as you're limerent, it's extremely unlikely that you're going to meet anybody. Like, we always rationalize it. We're like, well, I obsess about this person now, but I'm filling time until like the real person comes along. But the real person, people can't really see you. You have no cab light when you're limerent on somebody. It's kind of it's like going dark. You're not very luminous. You're not very attractive. It's not very realistic. It causes quirks in the personality that are a little bit sus, you know. And so it's good to clear up limerence and not to hold on to it. It's not a good idea to hold on to it. It's an addiction. How do I support someone with their own trauma and going through their own stuff while I also have to deal with my CPTSD? Well, I don't know. It's not very particular, is it? I think this idea of supporting people, you want to really support somebody, both of you do the daily practice together. I don't muck around anymore trying to get support from people who don't do this. The best way for me that I can be supported when I'm going through a hard time is somebody says, well, come on, let's sit down and write and meditate. Let's do that. That way I get relief. I don't go into this like trying to process it and talk about it for hours. And when we talk about our trauma to other people, it can not only activate dysregulation in us, but it can activate it in them. And that's brutal. That's why these relationships feel dead and go nowhere and hold people down. If you really want to get free, you can start getting it onto paper. Maybe you have a buddy who does the daily practice. You can read to each other. I would say you need friends who are walking the same path, who are like-minded about what the solution is. They're not trying to talk about it incessantly. I'm telling you, when you talk about your trauma, it can dysregulate you, reactivate it. So there's a time and a place to talk about your trauma, and that time and place is not all the time everywhere, if that makes sense. There's a time and a place when it's constructive to talk to somebody. But mostly what you're going to be doing as a person who's healing from trauma is focusing on like what's going on with me right now and how can I calm my symptoms. So dysregulation, disconnection, self-defeating behavior, these are like the three big areas that I see is what trauma does to us. And we can start healing any one of those on any day and start to feel better. All right. Zen Yourself says, is it possible to heal from CPTSD 100%? Is it for life? I think the evidence, the experience that most of us have had is that it's always kind of there, but it lies low. It's kind of dormant when you're taking care of staying, learning to re-regulate and starting to make the positive changes in your life. Like, for example, if you used to be in abusive relationships and you get out of abusive relationships, that's going to totally change your life. It's going to change your nervous system just because something isn't like re-traumatizing you again and again from outside yourself. A lot of us then are dealing with like the inside stuff that dysregulates us, the memories, the obsessions, the reactions that we get to things. But we start working on those. When you learn to re-regulate, re-regulated, when you learn to re-regulate, everything becomes possible. And you can start solving the life problems that tend to pile up in the lives of people who have been living their life dysregulated and affected by trauma. I mean, it really does a number to people. But it's kind of cool how the way that it affects us is very similar from person to person. When we start to learn what complex PTSD really is, or I often call it childhood PTSD, more people understand what that is. But once you know what it is, you realize, oh, it's a thing. I'm not doing this to myself on purpose. I'm not trying to hurt people. I have a really common set of symptoms. Now it's still only I can change my behaviors. Other people can't really do that for me. And so that's what separates people who are ready to heal from people who are not ready, is who is willing to take responsibility and say, I do want to change my behaviors. I'm going to work on that. I want to change my thinking. I'm willing to sit down and do the daily practice and start healing my mind. There's some people, they're just at a different phase of healing that's more about like identifying what happened. And I that you need to do that at some point, but I would just recommend don't stay there too long. It goes nowhere. It goes where it goes, where you get recognition of this is how I got this way and it's not my fault. That's a really good thing. You get a little validation. Now you need to learn how to do life. And that's what we do here. That's what we do. Sonara says, I'm wondering if you think the start of a panic attack is being possibly misunderstood and that it actually is when you're becoming dysregulated. Yeah, yeah. I don't have the definitive answer on that, but I have thought the same thing. Every now and then I get a panic attack. And when it's starting, it has certain signs that I also get when I'm just plain old dysregulated. My hands go numb. I get a weird, distorted sense of what's going on around me. I'll sort of see visual chaos. Just the last time I had a really bad panic attack, my husband and I were driving in San Salvador and it was trafficy. And I just started having a panic attack and I didn't know what was happening at first. I was like, am I getting a migraine? I just felt very strange. I think migraines, also like getting dysregulated reminds me of slipping into a migraine. For anybody who gets migraines, it does feel like there's this kind of like chemical and electrical shift that's going on where you're going into it now. And that is how it feels to get dysregulated for me. It's like something comes over me and there's a shift inside. It's a chemical and electrical sort of feeling. I've said before, I can feel it going down my arms sometimes, the upset that's coming. So I don't know. I think we're going to learn a lot more in the coming years about what exactly is going on and what kinds of dysregulation there are. But for now, we can notice like what's happening with me. I'm checking out. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I feel like visual chaos. That's what happens. Like in a car, it can feel like when it came on, there were billboards going past. There were a lot of billboards on the side of the road and they were going past. And I started feeling like, wow, so many billboards, make them stop. There's so many and they're going past. Like I was getting visually overwhelmed. And that also reminds me a little bit of a migraine. So I've wondered about that. And I've never had a seizure, but sometimes getting dysregulated feels like I imagine a seizure feels. And I say that very delicately because I don't actually know. But again, it feels like an electrical shift, a chemical and electrical shift where, your brain kind of gets stuck in some mode. So I think people are figuring this out and I'm down for it. I'm so interested to learn more about what's coming up about trauma. All right, Daisy Cake says, relationship wise, how do you know trauma is triggered versus an actual toxic relationship? Because I don't trust my judgment and can't seem to figure it out. So that's the big question for anybody with trauma. Is it just me or is this person terrible? Am I tripping? Am I just like projecting that they're so terrible or is this real? There are two things you must have if you're going to start straightening out your perception about this, and you need good perception. These are very important questions. And but to do it, you need very good tools that help you sort out truth and imagination. And you need a group of friends who get it, who are also walking the path and who understand with you. So I lived this. I had these problems. I've had CPTSD. It got progressively worse through my young adulthood. And by the time I was 30, it was quite bad. And that's when I learned my daily practice techniques. And the two things that have helped me is my daily practice, which is my tools, and the group of friends that I used to hang out with who also did the daily practice. And now I have a new group of friends who do the daily practice, and it's crappy childhood fairy people. So we write about it. Sometimes we read it to another person if they're willing to hear it. They don't have to fix it for us. It's funny how much you don't have to really fix problems. Sometimes writing them and reading it aloud is enough to sort of loosen it up from your mind where you are, totally trapped by that set of thoughts. They've just got you by the brain and you can't really stop, and you can't stop seeing yourself as, the victim of this thing that's going on. And your thoughts can change when you have tools and friends to help you with it. Carol Minky says, question how to respond not to react to triggers that dysregulate us in public. I know, right? So it's really good to practice taking a break from a conversation. When you suddenly feel something escalating within yourself or a conflict is brewing with somebody, if you don't know them at all and you can't tell them what's going on, you say, oh, hold on a second. I just need to run to the bathroom. And when you're in the bathroom, you can write your daily practice. If there's somebody you know well and they know you do the daily practice and they know that you're working on healing your dysregulation, you can say, I feel myself getting dysregulated and I really like you and I want to hear what you're saying. And I don't want to end up like yelling at you about it like I did last time. Can I have 15 minutes to go write and get myself re-regulated and try again and meet you then? Most people who care about you are delighted to hear you offer that. That's exactly what they were always sort of hoping that you do, is become aware that you are triggery and you'll do something about it. That's such a loving and responsible and smart thing to do. All right, Debbie V says, is dysregulation the same as dissociation? Yeah, it is. I used to call it dissociation, but dissociation is large. It's like dissociation is feeling separate from ourselves. And it can be, feeling separate from your senses and your body too. And you're not noticing that you're hungry. You're not noticing you're in danger. You can't remember that you're on the bus right now and you missed your stop. So you're checked out. And that's an aspect of dysregulation, but it can go so far as where you feel like you're not real, or you don't feel like you're you. That's depersonalization, derealization. So I switched words when I learned about the word dysregulation. It's so much more friendly and normal. It's just like, yeah, my nervous system is a little out of sync. And we know that happens to everybody sometimes. It especially happens to people who are traumatized as kids. And it can be a little harder for us to get back out of it. So we have to practice. We practice re-regulating, and we get re-regulated as quickly as possible. And we notice when we're dysregulated. And that right there is the key to accelerating your healing. When you know what it is and you can pause and use your tools to re-regulate, the whole game changes. Now everything is possible for you. So Ozzy says, when doing the daily practice of fears, well, fears and resentments, I'm just going to correct you. It's always fears and resentments. I feel as though I'm journaling. Can you explain the difference, please? Yes. Journaling is where you write things because you might read them again, because you maybe want to document things that have happened or observations you've had. Not so. The daily practice is more like cutting your toenails. There's too much there and you need to cut it off and throw it away. That's all. There's too much. I don't know if you know this, but the early trauma wound actually causes an injury to our ability to process thoughts and feelings. So that feeling that you're just like jammed up, your head is full, it's real. Your head is full. All those thoughts and feelings, you're having trouble moving them from active experiences into memories. An active experience means they give you adrenaline, they give you cortisol, they kind of, activate you, get you all dysregulated. Whereas a memory is just like, yes, this thing happened in the past. And you can recall the memory, but your whole nervous system isn't reacting to it. So see, that's one of the consequences of complex PTSD is you can't process those thoughts and feelings so well. The daily practice is a way to do that. And other things that help with processing are exercise, movement that's done together with other people where you're using the left and right side of your body, like karate, jujitsu, ballet, marching, the hokey pokey. I just did a show in London over the summer and I taught them the hokey pokey. They sort of knew it. I said, this is an American tradition of how we get re-regulated. But when everybody puts their right hand in, everybody puts their right hand out, they put their right hand in, they shake it all about. Guess what? Our nervous systems are totally co-regulating. It's very helpful. So that's why it's the go-to thing. That sort of thing is, teachers love it because kids can sort of collect themselves and not be so frazzled and dysregulated as kids will be. So when we get together, we get to focus a lot on re-regulation techniques that we can do through a whole bunch of ways. Oh, journaling. So I just wanted to go back to journaling. In the daily practice, we throw it away. We tear it up as soon as we wrote it. We tear it up so that nobody reads it. There's no intention to ever read what you wrote again. You're taking out the garbage of all this excess negative thoughts and feelings. Fear in two categories, fears and resentments. And so some people, I say, don't put it in a nice leather-bound book. You're just going to rip it up. The only time you wouldn't rip it up afterwards is if you had a plan that day to read it to somebody that we call a buddy. It's somebody who also does the daily practice, who you're just going to read what you wrote, and they're going to say, thank you for sharing that. I relate a lot. It's all they have to do. But it's very powerful to read aloud sometimes these fearful thoughts. It tends to make them evaporate. They just they get much lighter. We don't believe them so strongly anymore once we've written them and say them aloud. And you can write things and you can read what you wrote, and it's not as dysregulating for many of us, certainly me, as it is to just tell people. So we're not just telling people, we're not trying to remember, we're not trying to come up with a big log of bad things that have ever happened. Those are other things, and you can do those in your life if you find them helpful, but it's not the daily practice. We're just naming the fearful, resentful thoughts on paper, asking for them to be removed, and then we rest our minds with 20 minutes meditation, very simple. And I believe that during that time, our minds and nervous system just kind of do a little bit of putting themselves back together. We get frazzled. We get frazzled from the course of the day, just from moving around and dealing with life, and certainly if something stressful happens. Ruth says, I'm learning to re-regulate slowly. One fear I have is returning to driving. I'm so worried I will be crap at this. How can I begin to gain confidence again? My world is so small otherwise. Well, that's a really good example, Ruth, of how our world gets small because something is triggering for us and we haven't yet learned how to neutralize the trigger. And that's what you're going to be doing when you do this healing, this path of healing, is start neutralizing your trigger. And to do that, we're not doing that through exposure. We're doing it by naming and naming and naming the thing that sets it off. Fear, I'm going to crash. Fear, I'm going to space out and, go off the road. Fear, I'm going to wobble. Fear, I'll get pulled over for drunk driving. I'm just imagining what might be the fears associated with driving and it's true. I tell people when you're severely dysregulated, don't drive. I have rear-ended a truck before when I was dysregulated. I did it 5 minutes after I drove away with the gas pump hanging out of my car. And when I got out of my car after I hit the truck, I was like, look what's hanging out of my car. I mean, I just looked like a bat out of hell, but I was very dysregulated. I had a lot going on. And I realized I needed to stop and pull over. So what we do when we notice we're dysregulated, we're seeing it in our physical actions. We're dropping things, we're tripping, we're lashing out, we're spacing out. When we know we're dysregulated, we just stop and drop and use our tools to get re-regulated again before we proceed, before we try to have the conversation or drive across the bridge. These are all things that we can do better regulated. So it's just such a great habit to get into. And the beautiful thing is you can get re-regulated wherever you are. There's several ways to do it. Writing is one of them. Movement is one of them. Going outside and moving is a good one. Taking a cold shower or alternating between cold and hot. If you can't take a shower, do your hands. There's a lot of things you can do to give your nervous system just a little jolt to the nervous system. It's kind of like if you've ever seen in a hospital or on TV, defibrillator, those paddles, they get them all charged up and they put them on the chest and they clear. Well, I've seen it on TV 1,000 times, right? And it jolts the heart back into beating, hopefully. And so it is with our nervous system. Sometimes we just need a little jolt to kind of get our nervous system synced up again and operating in its rightful pulsing fashion. We have this museum in San Francisco called the Exploratorium, and it had this exhibit. I was there last week with my family, and you put your hands on these things that are feeling the electricity of your pulse, and it's feeding it to this place where they have heart cells, living heart cells. And when you're not touching the handlebars, the heart cells are just sitting there, but they're alive. And as soon as the electricity from your heart comes, you give it a few seconds and they start beating. They start beating to the pulse of your heart. And I was so fascinated with that. I did it for like 15 minutes and I kept thinking about it like, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting how the pulse of my body and my nervous system are communicating with these living cells in a petri dish? So if my cells can talk to a petri dish, what happens when you and I hold hands? What happens when you and I sit at a restaurant together? No wonder we co-regulate. No wonder one person feeling miserable and dysregulated can dysregulate other people, and vice versa. Somebody who's feeling really re-regulated can have a really grounding effect on people who are dysregulated. And that's where it comes in handy to have strategies to stay regulated in relationship to other people. So it's a lovely thing when both people understand what the strategies are and you can cooperate on it and they don't act like you're crazy or making excuses for yourself. Like the most beautiful and responsible thing a person can do who gets dysregulated is learn to re-regulate. Thank you, everybody. It's the end of our hour together, and I'll see you on YouTube. Lots of good videos ahead coming. Got some very troubled relationships with some people who probably need to leave their relationships in the videos that are going to be posted in the next few weeks. So check it out. Come show up for the videos with me and come do the daily practice. And if you want to be a member, we just want you. Come all the way in and sit down. We'd love to have you in our community. All right. Bye, everybody.